All right, so let us talk about how to get a project set up in Easel so that we can carve it with our CNC. To get going, you're going to go to easel.inventables.com. You will need to log in. We have the login credentials right next to the machine, so you can go grab those and type them in. And you're going to create a new project. So this is kind of the basic layout of Easel. We have an X-Carve that lets us do up to 29.5 inches square. So whatever your material size is, it needs to be that size or smaller. So 29.5 inches on the largest side. So go ahead and put in the actual size of the material that you're using. I'm going to use one that is about 8 inches by 8 inches. All right. I just want to show you can go pretty big. So if you have one that's a full size of the machine, you can get that set up on the design, and it'll show up on the preview of Easel as well. So just kind of walking through everything. You have your menu bar up here. You can talk about different stuff about your project. You can edit different stuff once you start adding. The machine you shouldn't have to change. We always use our X-Carve toolboxes in here. You won't need to go in there unless you're trying to change some advanced stuff. This is just for the basic CNC stuff we'll go through here. So I'm going to make a really simple name plaque that has an oval with my name on it. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to make sure my material is the right size by setting up the height, or the width and the length, and then the thickness. You should use a set of calipers that are in the drawer for the CNC machine to make sure that is the right thickness, and set that in inches. All right. A couple of things that you always want to double check, again, for basic carves. You don't want to do any tiling, and you want to make sure your XY0 is front left corner. Those should be the default settings, but if something's weird's going on with your design or your carve, just double check those things. All right. Click out of that to close it, and then zoom in on your design. All right, so I got my design right here. I'm just gonna make a nice little oval shape that I'm going to put my name inside. So I dragged the circle outside. I'm gonna make it a little bit wider, like that. And there we go. I can type in all of these settings if I know exactly how big it needs to be, exactly how big I want it. What else can I do? I can center this to the material that I'm using, so that looks nice. All right, and that is cool, but that is going to carve an oval into the wood. What I want to do, if I want to cut out a shape, I need to change my cut settings, and I need to change it from clearing a pocket to cutting a path. A couple of different ways to do it. You can cut on the shape path, outside the shape path, inside the shape path. If you have a very specific dimension that you need, you should probably cut outside the shape path, because that'll make it so that that center part is the exact shape that you want. If you're trying to cut an exact hole that you need, you should cut inside the shape path, because that outline is going to be where the bit travels. That's what this is showing, is where the bit is going to travel. And the bit has a width that we just need to keep into account when we're designing our piece. So that is going to cut a little bit into the material, but if I want to cut this all the way through, I need to make my cut depth the same depth as my material. And once I get all the way down to 0, a couple of things happen. You can see on the preview that it is going to cut all the way through. You can see how it just is a cutout right there. The other thing that's going to happen is these yellow little bits show up on my design. That is going to be a tiny little bit of material that the machine doesn't cut, so that the piece stays attached to the rest of the wood. That way it doesn't, get totally disconnected from the rest of the wood and start rattling around in there while it's cutting. So those are the tabs you want to leave on. You can change the settings for the tabs, but usually the default is going to be good for you. All right, I'm going to add some text. I'm going to pick any of these fonts that I like. You can add some more fonts in there too. You can also do your own design in something like Illustrator and bring that in. But if we just want to do some basic stuff, I'm going to find a good font. I like this. This looks fun. I'm going to install that one. It's called Antic Slab. See if I can find it. Antic Slab right there. All right, and the text shows up on there. I'm going to drag it to where I want it. Double click it to edit it. Change my name to be in there, and we look good to go. Kind of. All right, my design looks good, but my preview does not look good. That's because I need to take into account the size of the bit again. All right, so the bits we see in the machine, I'll show you what that looks like. The bits have a certain thickness to them. Most of the time we're going to be using 1/8 or 1/4 inch bit or a V bit, and that is going to let you get different levels of detail going on. For this outside circle on my oval, I'm going to use an 1/8 inch bit to cut it. For my name right here, I'm going to change my bit to be a V bit, a 60-degree V bit. All right, a couple of different options. We have the 1/8 inch or the 1/4 inch. I'm going to pick the 1/8 inch. And that is going to do a couple of things. First up, it's going to totally mess my outside carve up. So I don't want that. A couple of different ways we can fix that. So if I go back and I make my bit size the 1/8 inch bit, just a straight end mill. Okay, that's good. All right, so I have my name there, I have my outline shape there, but it doesn't look great on the preview, and that's because if I try to use this 1/8 inch bit, the thickness of the font that I chose is thinner than that 1/8 inch bit. So a couple of different options. One thing I could do is I could use a thinner bit, and that will work, but that'll make this outside cut take even longer. It's probably not the most efficient way to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that bit back to the regular 1/8 inch straight cut. I'm going to separate this out into 2 cuts. All right, so I'm going to take my workplace right down here. I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to delete the thing that's going to get cut out on the 1/8 inch. And now I'm going to change my bit to a 60-degree V bit. You can see the 1/8 inch V bit is still right there. We got a couple of different options. I'm going to stick with the 1/8 inch shank and the 60-degree bit. And now you can see that font comes out really nice and crisp and clear on the preview. The cut is not there, but that's because it's already here. And I can choose which order I want to do stuff in. I would probably do the finer detail stuff first while it's all one piece, and then go back and then use the 1/8 inch bit to cut it all out. All right, so I can drag stuff around so it's in different order. This works for my brain in having the order of the cuts match the order that they are left to right on the bottom, but that is up to you. All right, one last thing I want to do, instead of just a little medallion, if I want to turn this into a keychain, a couple of different options I could do. I know that I just need one little hole for that, so I could make a circle, or I could just do a drill right there, and that's going to use whatever bit is in my settings, and that'll add an 1/8 inch hole. But you can see it's the same thing as a regular cut. Can we see the little preview? It will cut all the way through. You can see right there, it's showing all the way through. Looking at it, that's probably not a big enough hole for what I need to do in this case, but if I do need just like one specific drill point, you can use the drill function instead. All right, so I'm going to add another hole, turn this into a keychain, make it nice and small, and put it up there. Again, I can clear out a path, which will clear it out layer by layer, but instead I am going to go and do that inside cut now, cut inside the shape path, and that'll be a perfect, 0.4 inch hole on the top, and make sure the cut goes all the way through. All right, that's going to try and keep a tab. I'm going to turn the tab off because that little bit of material there, not a big deal. All right, so that'll just cut all the way through. All right, so now I have 2 cuts. I have the detail cut right there and the cut through cut right there. I will run it on the machine, first the detail, then the cut through, and you'll be good to go. I do also want to show you how you can get your own designs in there. I mentioned that you could use, make something in Illustrator and bring it in. If you hit that import button, you can import an SVG. You can also do an image trace. I'll show you both of those real quick. Suppose I wanted to get a picture of a fish in here somehow. I'm going to find fish, outline, clip art. Let's see what that looks like. All right, that's perfect. I love that fish. It's good. I'm going to copy that image. I think I could do it this way. I'm going to import image trace, and I need to import, I need to upload the file. So I want to grab an image. I'm going to found a nice little outline of a fish that I like. I'm going to save this image as, let's call it fish outline. I just save my downloads, and that will, it's a place I know where to get to. You can save it wherever. You can save it on your desktop if you want. And once it downloads, you can see it's in my downloads right there. I can actually just grab it from my downloads by going this, and there's the fish outline. Or I can click on the upload button, choose a file from my computer, and it'll show me the upload file selector as well. Either one works. There it is. There's my fish outline, and I upload it. All right. Now what's going to happen is going to show you what it found for my outline. So that looks pretty good. You can change some of the settings if it's not looking exactly the way you want it to. I'm just going to try and do it like that. It looks good. Some of the things you could do is if I just want the outside of the fish and not the inside, if I click on that, trace outlines, it'll give me the outlines of that. That's not quite what I want. I do want that whole fish shape. If I invert it, you'll see that it gives me the other things. So all that gray stuff would be carved away. That's a little extreme for what I want. I just want that fish shape. So I'm going to import that. Look, I got a fish. All right, I got a fish. I can add my little fish to, oops, my design. You can see all the different parts of that thing, the image trace come in separately. So I'm gonna add a teeny tiny little fish. All right. And again, this is on the second one with the where we're carving through, so I probably should have put it on the first one. I'm gonna try cutting it and pasting it. There we go. There's my little fish. He's so cute. All right, so that looks pretty good. And if I put it onto the other one, it looks perfect placement, so I like that. The other thing you do, if you want to import your SVG, you can export your SVG or save your SVG from Illustrator, and then same process, you gotta choose your file, and I'm going to get my SVG chosen, and then it comes in right like that. All right, so you can see a lot of different options for how you can do that. Easel will do its best to take the color of your design and use that for your depth. So that's a cool way you can get some different layers of cutting going on if you change your different gray levels in Illustrator in your design. But for now, I'm just going to stick with the fish. Fish looks good, and I am ready to go. All right, so that's the basics of setting up Easel. I did this on my computer, and then next thing I need to do is go on the computer that's attached to the X-Carve and get the design actually ready to go. So we'll do that next. All right, so this is our CNC machine, the X-Carve. I'm going to talk you through a little bit of everything that's here to kind of get you oriented. This is the machine itself. It is a router that's attached to the control mechanism, and that is what is connected to the computer, which gives instructions for how to move the router around to cut all these shapes on the CNC machine. This is kind of the brain of the CNC machine. This red button is the most important one. This is an emergency stop. You smack that down, it'll shut off the machine, it'll stop the drill, it'll stop it moving. This is kind of like a robot with a drill attached to the end of it. It is dangerous if you don't use it respectfully. This is an emergency tool to use to stop it if you need to. In here we have a bunch of tools that we use with the CNC machine. These are the screws that you use in alignment with the clamps to get your piece locked down onto the board. I'll show you how to do that. This is a set of calipers that measures the thickness of your material. These are wrenches for if you need to change what kind of bit you're using. I'll show you what that is. This is double-sided tape that you can use to lock your material down to the board. Either clamps or tape are a good bet for doing that. Here are the bits that we're going to use the most often. The most often that we're going to use are these 1/8 inch straight cut bits. Those live right here. These ones are also 1/8 inch bits with some different ways of hitting the material. When in doubt, use the straight cut bit or Google it or ask a teacher or a peer about which bit you should use. But the basic straight, kind of boring, but they work really well, 1/8 inch bits are the ones that we're going to use for most of our cuts. If you need a little bit more detail, we can use the 1/16 inch bits. You can see they're a little bit thinner and finer on the top. They are more prone to breaking, which is why the 1/8 inch is usually good kind of all around. The other option we have are these guys. Up here, these are the bigger bits that we have. So I want to show you the difference. Here's an 1/8 inch bit with an 1/8 inch shank, and here's a 1/4 inch bit with a 1/4 inch shank. You can see the 1/8 inch all the way down, 1/4 inch all the way down. But let me show you why this might be a little bit different. I have right here 2 different 60-degree bits. There's one with the 1/8 inch shank. Here's one with the 1/4 inch shank. You can see the tip at the top, it's still got that 60-degree carve into it, but the shanks are significantly different in size. So if you can work with the 1/8 inch one and the 1/8 inch collet is already in there, that's awesome. If you need the 1/4 inch one, 1/4 inch one is right there. I just said the word collet. Collet are the pieces of the router that keep the bits locked in, all right? They look pretty similar. We've got one in there right now. These are both 1/4 inch collets, and I'll show you the 1/8 inch collet as we change it out. All right, so if we do need to change out our bit, I'll show you how we do that. All right, we'll bring the router all the way up, and I'm going to raise this bit up using the computer. All right, and give myself just enough room to take that bit out. And then I am going to undo this collet just so you can see what it looks like. This is the 1/8 inch collet, and it uses a different wrench than the 1/4 inch collet. All right, so I am holding onto this yellow button right here, while I'm using the wrench. And I'm pressing that button while I'm putting the wrench into the collet and then twisting it at the same time. The reason is this collet is supposed to spin. It's a drill, it's a router, all right? So this is supposed to spin. This keeps it from spinning so I can actually unlock it. Let's see what that looks like. All right, pressing the button, getting the teeth of the wrench into the spot where it goes. And then you need to kind of use the wrench twice. Once to get it going, and then once you're most of the way unlocked, it sticks again. That's on purpose. And you loosen it again. And then you can loosen the rest by hand, all right? At this point, once it's loose enough to take the bit out, I can just take the bit out, and if I'm swapping to another bit with the same size shank, I don't need to do anything else to this. But I do want to show you what it looks like when we are changing the collet to use a bigger size bit. All right, so I'm going to hold the 1/8 inch and the 1/4 inch side by side. You can see the 1/8 inch has an 1/8 inch receptacle. The 1/4 inch has a 1/4 inch receptacle. So if I need to put the 1/4 inch on, same process, just a different wrench. All right, so I start spinning it on while I'm holding the button until it feels like it's on there pretty good. I put a different bit on there. I'll just put a 1/4 inch bit with the 1/4 inch shank to show you what that looks like. All right, and I tighten it with my hands until it feels tight. And then I keep using that button and the wrench to get it all the way locked. This is the wrench for the 1/4 inch collet. I get that around there and tighten it till it can't move anymore. That way I know it's secure. That way as I'm using the router, I know it's going to be safe. All right, so I'll show you real quick again. Here is the 1/4 inch collet, the 1/4 inch collet wrench. Here is the 1/8 inch collet, the 1/8 inch collet wrench. All right, two different tools because we can do two different things with them. So I'm going to set up to do my actual cut. I'm going to throw on that 1/8 inch collet with the V-bit so you can see what that looks like. And then we'll do our first carve and then we'll do our second carve. So again, loosening, you're going to have to loosen it until you can spin it with your fingers and then loosen it most of the way and then use the wrench one more time to get it all the way off. It's just a little awkward for me because of the angle that I'm filming at. All right, but that comes off. All right, the collet comes all the way off. All right, and then the 1/8 inch collet goes on. All right, once that's most of the way on, pop the bit in. And then you want to push the bit in as much as it'll go while still having the part that actually cuts out. That'll make it more stable and sturdy as you're doing your cuts. Again, just a little tricky to do this without being able to see. Here we go. And that could probably go in a little further. I'm comfortable with how far it is right now. Tighten it up, log it in, and then begin. All right, that is nice and tight. That is good to go. I'm gonna get my carve set up on the computer and show you what that looks like next. All right, I am set to send my cuts to the machine. I'm going to show you what it looks like when we're actually setting the machine up. My correct bit is installed. I'm going to secure my piece. Cool thing about this machine is you can put it pretty much wherever and you can tell the machine where the corner of your piece is. So I'm going to put my material. I like putting it on one of these tracks just because I know that these are perfectly straight and I can get my piece, assuming it's cut well, to line up right there. Then what I do is I grab a couple of clamps and bars and I figure out the right combination that works for my piece and my material for where to clamp it down. You want to have it clamped down in at least 3 spots. 4 is good. There's a lot of different ways to approach this, but your goal, no matter what, is to make it so you can't move this piece of material around while the machine is running. So I think I'll get one right there. I'll get one right there, and I'm thinking about where my design is. I'm going to have that oval, so I guess I'll move it a little bit up, a little bit down. That looks pretty good, and I'll get one more to go with it, and I'll get that on the top. All right, so that'll be out of the way of the tool while it's cutting. All right, so then I need to find the right size clamp that'll lock these guys in without breaking the bars. So I put that in, and I start spinning it until it goes all the way down. I'm gonna add the rest of these as well. All right, I'm locked in there. I'm trying to move the piece around. It's not going anywhere, so that is good to go. From here on out, we are using a tool, so make sure, remember to breathe. We have all our proper PPE on, and we're good to go. All right, so next I need to go over to the computer. Over on the computer, I have my project loaded up. I have confirmed my design looks good, and my bit is correct. One thing I do want to do is double check the thickness of my material, so I have an offcut of it right here. I'm going to use the calipers to measure the thickness. And it says right there, it's 0.68 inches, thereabouts, 0.7 inches, 0.68 inches. I'm going to use this for my material thickness instead of that 0.75 that I originally had. So changing that is as easy as clicking on my material and then changing the thickness to 0.68. That looks good. All right, everything is good. I'm still gonna do my cut through next, but first I'm doing that V carve. So then I hit the carve button and it's gonna give me some stuff that I need to double check. First thing, measure the material. I already did this. I set the correct thickness of 0.68, confirm the material thickness, and we're good to go. Clamp down the material. We already did that. Make sure your material is fully secure. We are good to go. Now that the material is good, we gotta double check our bit. That is the bit I put in, that 60-degree V bit looks good. Confirm that. Now here's the important part. The work zero. What we are going to do is we're going to manually set where that front left corner of our piece is. And something I just noticed is that I actually have a clamp right where my piece is, so I'm going to change that. Now that I've changed that, I'm going to use the controls on screen to move the machine around. So I'm going to show you what this looks like on the screen and then show you what it looks like on the tool. All right. So we have our X and our Y, which is going to be our left, right, and front to back, and then our Z, which is going to be our up and our down. The settings over here control how much the machine moves at once. You can usually leave this at 0.1. If you're got to move way across to the other side of the cutting area, you can put the X, Y on 1. I would never put the Z on 1 just because that moves too much at once. If you do get to the end of how far the machine can move, it'll make a little bit of a grinding noise. Not to worry, it's not a big deal here actually. I'll let you know what this sounds like. I'm going to move the machine over as far left as it can go, and you can see what that's going to sound like. Right, you can hear it's hitting as far as it can go, so it's not going to let you go any further. All right, so you can use the arrow keys or you can click the buttons on screen to get the machine to move around. So I'm going to I like using the arrow keys. You use whatever you're comfortable with to get the machine all the way over to so that the bit is just barely touching that very front corner of the machine. Let's show you what this looks like. All right, so right here is the front left corner of my material. I'm going to use the keyboard controls to get it so it's just barely touching right there. All right, that is pretty darn close, but actually if you look, there's a little bit of a gap between the drill bit and the actual material. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change how much I'm moving the Z-axis by to be 0.01, and that'll make it move even less as I lower the drill bit. All right, that looks pretty darn close, I think. One trick that you can do is you can slide a piece of paper in between the drill bit and the material, and if you could just barely move it while scraping, that is close enough. All right, so I can move it a little bit more. All right, and that feels like there's the right amount of pressure for me. All right, so now that we're good to go, what we're gonna do is we're gonna confirm this as our new position. You can see my drill bit is right there touching where it needs to go. Hard to show on camera, but we are ready, set to go. All right, so I like where that's at. I'm going to use the new position that we just set. So now we're going to raise the bit just so that we can start the drill bit safely. All right, we're going to skip the dust shoe for now. That just helps with some dust collection, but we're going to vacuum it up afterwards. All right, and now I need to turn the spindle on. The way you turn the spindle on is by pressing this switch on the router, and I'll start the thing spinning. Once that's good to go, you say the spindle is on, and you can say carve, and I'll start to carve out whatever you have set up on the machine. Here we go. Cut is done. I'm going to turn off the router. And that's only the first part of the cut. We need to get our second cut good to go. So I'm going to just show you real quick speed run through changing the bit and getting the next one to set up, because after this the process is exactly the same. You got your design set up, you get your bit properly picked, you get your material settings dialed in, and then you set your 0 and you're good to cut. All right, so design, bit, materials, 0, and then you're good to go. Let's see what this looks like. Before I change the bit, I'm going to raise the whole device so that I can get to the bit. Right now it's right on that corner. It might be tricky for me to get in there, so I'm going to raise the bit first. All right, if you were able to replace the bit without moving the X, Y at all, you could just lower the Z axis and be good to go again. I always like to re-center and re-home the bit before going, just because it can be a little tricky to get that perfectly set in place. So let's go through the whole thing real quick. We're going to carve. First we need to switch over to our second carve. So I'm going over here. I see those two little dots there in the name. I'm going to just delete the text because the carve looks excellent to me. I don't need to recarve that stuff. So I'm just going to carve the cutout parts now. I go to carve it. Material thickness is the same, it's still clamped. We have the new bit. I changed out the bit, so I just want to confirm that that new bit is the one we're using. The work 0, we're going to re-zero it one more time. And now that the work 0 is set again to that bottom left corner, I can use the new position, raise the bit, turn on the spindle, and we're good to go again. Spindle is on, I click carve, and it's going to carve out the outline. All right, carve is done. Before I pull this off, I'm just going to double check, see if it cut all the way through. Sometimes with thicker cuts, you can't really tell if it cut all the way through. And I actually can't tell right now where it is. Something you might want to consider is giving yourself a little bit, maybe an extra 1/10 or 5/100ths of an inch with your thickness for your material, just to make sure it goes all the way through. But I'm pretty happy with this. If it didn't go all the way through, I can run it through the bandsaw real quick to get those pieces out. No, we're good. All right, so I was able to just pop that out. Normally you're gonna take this out, but I was just kind of playing with it. So yeah, there you go. There's the cut. You can see here is where one of my tabs were that was keeping it held on before I pulled it out. But there it is. There's my CNC design and my CNC cut through, and that is the CNC machine. Have fun playing with this. This is a really cool machine, especially if you dig into some of the more complex stuff. But this is really just the basics of getting a picture on there, your name, and doing a cutout shape. All right, happy carving.